We only have how many months to go? Less than 6 months to go. And the ASEAN economic integration will be upon us already. That's 2015. So how ready are we HR practitioners to deal with the challenges and opportunities that the free flow of labor, capital, goods, and services will bring about, and the ensuing migration as well, movement of labor that follows suit? How ready are we? Now let's talk briefly about the ASEAN 10. What is the ASEAN 10? So these are the 10 countries comprising the ASEAN. No? They're all in here. Okay? We have the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Laos, what else? Myanmar. What else did I miss? And Thailand. So these are the ASEAN 10. And these are the economies combined. These economies combined will have a total population of 600 million, 8th largest economy in the world, $2.356 trillion in GDP, and the 3rd strongest economic growth force in Asia, next only to China and to India. So the ASEAN Economic Community, or AEC, is the end goal of regional economic integration amongst these ASEAN 10. Together, the AEC is reckoned to be a strong economic force, and as I said, second only to India and China in Asia. So what are the key characteristics of the AEC community? So this envisages the following key characteristic. Number 1, single market and production base. B, highly competitive economic region. So rather than competing as individual nations with one another, we will compete as a mighty global region with the rest of the world. A region of equitable economic development and a region fully integrated into the global economy. So in short, the AEC will transform ASEAN into a region with free movement of goods, services, investment, skilled labor, and freer flow of capital. Now, what does that mean for us, HR practitioners? Now, let's take a look at some data. And to many of you, this might be the first time that you're seeing this data. I got most of this from an ILO survey that was released only in May 2014. Okay, so what do these data tell us? So the first chart shows how enterprises or companies, okay, will most likely respond to increased competition within the ASEAN region. So what it shows is that almost 90% of companies intend to engage or initiate into different types of improvements or enhancements within their operations in order to thrive in a more globalized economy. Okay? So this includes machinery and technology update here. Innovation and good news, increasing wages of skilled workers and additional investment in skills training. Now, one of the things that you might want to focus your attention to is here. The least popular choice amongst the surveyed employers is reducing wages. Okay? So it seems, based on this data, that most of the enterprises think and believe that that if you want to compete in this regional, very competitive market, that's the last thing that you do. Rather, you invest in paying more for the skills that you need to drive your business. Okay? Now, what does the second graph tell us? This tells us about the impact of greater mobility of high-skilled workers on enterprise wages. This one. So the second chart further highlights how most respondents are willing to consider higher wages to attract and retain skilled workers. Now, do take note that I will keep on repeating and emphasizing skilled workers because the freer flow of labor envisioned within the AAC specifically pertains to skilled labor. Okay? So next chart. As expected, there are many apprehensions about the impact of integration on business. However, the general response has been largely very optimistic, with strong belief that the freer flow of goods, services, and labor will drive higher level of competitiveness. So generally, employers and enterprises think that a borderless market is really good for business rather than bad. Now, having said that, one of the long-enduring concerns in ASEAN, particularly in the Philippines, is the availability of skilled labor. So the good news is that the shortfall and shortages that many industries are experiencing in the Philippines, particularly in the BPO sector, those are being felt also across all ASEAN countries, in spite of the fact that we have relatively high level of literacy and educational attainment. So this chart, okay, shows how enterprises in each of the ASEAN countries view the mismatch between university graduates. So this is tertiary, and the needs of the industries. Okay, where does Philippines stand here? So Philippines is here, around, what's that, 80% favorable. Okay, next only to Singapore. So I know that we keep on belaboring this mismatch, etc. We're not getting the quality of people that we need, and so on and so forth. But look, comparing to our other ASEAN neighbors, we're not too bad. Second only to Singapore. Now, we'd rather be here than here, no? Where countries like Myanmar and even Indonesia actually have a lot of catching up to do insofar as bridging the mismatch is concerned. Given that the gross enrollment ratio, that's not being shown here, but the gross enrollment ratio in tertiary education in most of the ASEAN countries is less than 50%. Did you know that? I just found out when I was doing my research. Thank you, Rebecca, for harassing me. That the gross enrollment ratio in tertiary education of the Philippines is actually just around 29%. Okay? So that highlights now that, hey, if you have a skills gap, look towards that. Look towards that population that's not graduating from college. Now, this same survey actually did highlight too that the graduates, okay, those who have attained tertiary education actually have better match to the job. However, we know already that there's not enough of them. So this is where the partnership between industries, no, and academic institutions or training institutions and government bodies become important. This also emphasizes the very important role that TVETs, you know what TVETs are? The TESDAs of this world, the technical, vocational, educational training, play. Because they, through these institutions, were able to target those high school graduates who need upskilling so that they can become part of the productive workforce. Insofar as training is concerned, how do we fare versus our ASEAN neighbors? And what trainings enterprises think are necessary to drive the business forward in 2015 and to win within that very competitive landscape? Okay? So what do you see there? So in general, because there are obviously country variations. Again, Philippines is here. Okay? There are country variations, but in general, you will find that the biggest opportunity for training is in what area? Middle management. Management training. So again, this is across different types of industries, not just the call center industry. Because when I was reading this, I was thinking, my God, all of these things are so true, particularly in the call center industry. We decry the lack of qualified leaders. We decry the fact that we need gray hairs and wrinkles. We need to have our coaches and our OMs grow wrinkles and white hair in order for them to be more competent at what they do. So the first one here is really management training. Okay? And then second is generally technical and vocational training. So the hard skills. Okay? And then afterwards, we have customer service in general, the green ones. Customer service. Because a significant portion of economic growth and jobs that will be available, projected in 2014, is going to be in the service industry, especially in the ASEAN region where we're known to be very hospitable and very service-oriented. So employers in ASEAN jointly believe that the greatest need is in the area of management training, as we've already highlighted. Now, under the AAC, the free flow of skilled labor is definitely key to driving knowledge transfer and competition amongst member countries. Now, intra-ASEAN labor mobility is expected to intensify even further in 2014. Based on the ILO survey, respondents in general view this to have a very positive impact on their enterprise. So let's take a look at this. Although in general, everybody thinks it's favorable to the business, look at where Philippines is insofar as not favorable is concerned. So here versus here. So there's a sizable portion of enterprises that believe that migration of labor is not going to be good for their business. Okay, why do you think so? It's because it's generally believed, particularly in the Philippines, that we will experience, because of AEC and the freer flow of labor, a net outflow deficit. Okay? And why is that? Because we have a younger population, and more importantly, we have a competitive advantage that other ASEAN neighbors do not have as strongly. And what is that? That's coveted by practically everyone. Our ability to speak English. Okay? That's why you will find that there's a lot of trepidation and apprehension about how AEC will impact our labor availability in the Philippines. For instance, 40 to 45% of annual flow from ASEAN, the ASEAN countries, to OECD countries. What are OECD countries? These are mostly Western countries. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development member countries. US is part of that, United Kingdom, European countries. So 40 to 45% of those come from where? The Philippines. So 40 to 45% of net outflow of the entire ASEAN region comes from the Philippines. This obviously will pose bigger problems for domestic employers, okay? Domestic employers who need to hire skilled workers, or even multinational or global players who intend to grow their business in the Philippines. Okay? So, what do we need? What should we prepare for as HR practitioner? Of course, there are many things that we need to prepare for. Okay, some are business related, some have to do with strategy, some have to do with how we're budgeting things. But as HR practitioner, in a nutshell, what do these data tell us? We need to prepare for, first and foremost, greater labor mobility. Secondly, higher wages for skilled workers. Again, emphasis on skilled workers. We need to be able to pay for the talent that we need to grow our business. And improvement of working conditions, of course, because they have more comparisons. Because of the borderless economy, they will be able to compare how you're treating them, the environment that you put them in versus the environment, for example, that they can get if they work in Singapore, okay, or in Indonesia. And sadly, continuing issues when it comes to mismatch of skills. Okay. So the question is your organization ready? So these are mostly results of my musings, no? During those times that I was in flight from India to the Philippines. How will I know if my organization is ready for the AEC? Of course, there are so many ways to find out from an HR perspective, but I think what is important, or these are some of the things that are important for our organizations to already have in place, or at least beginning to put in place in preparation for what will happen 6 months from now. First and foremost, how robust is your talent management process? Okay, talent management. What? So what are the core things that you need to know when you're building a talent management framework? First and foremost, what are your critical skills? Okay? And what are critical skills? Those skills that contribute directly to your competitive advantage as an organization. Right? What are those critical skills? You can't say that, all director level positions critical. No, that's not how it works. Okay? If you're an engineering company, would you say that HR director is a critical role for you? Oh, she's saying no. And Cecile is from an engineering company. So it has nothing to do with titles, but everything to do with the strategic competitive advantage of your organization. Who are the critical talents that are filling those critical roles? Do you have them identified already? Do you know whether they're portable or not? Okay, what do we mean when we say portable? Are they willing to relocate if given an opportunity? Now, you might say, well, we don't have sites elsewhere. We're just a domestic player, so I will not bother with that, really. But your competition will most likely have sites elsewhere. Is your talent willing and able to move elsewhere? Or does he have concerns, family stuff, that prevents him from doing so? Okay? You need to understand who amongst your talents are portable or not. What else? If your critical talent leaves, how deep is your succession plan? And if there's none internally, have you started building that pool externally? So those are just some of the few things that you need to ask when you think about the strength of talent management in your organization. Next, how inclusive are your policies and HR practices? Mon dealt a little bit with this. I'll give you one wake-up moment for me. And I thought, well, Sitel, global organization, we have all of these policies in place, we're cool, right? So last year I went to India, where I stayed for 3 months. And then on my second month there, our CFO, who's Indian, by the way, but based in the Philippines already, went to my office and said, HAIDEE, have you seen that sign in the restroom that says, please do not wash your feet here? And then I said, nope, never noticed it. He said, go to the ladies' restroom, see whether you have that sign there. And there I went, and there it was. Big sign. Says, please do not wash your feet here. You see, just like any washroom, the wash basin is this high. That's how it is, right? You can't have a wash basin this long. It's here. And most of our employees in our Mumbai site, around 2,300 of them, okay? The women, although the women is around 10%, they wear saris. So can just imagine, I was looking, how do they manage, what would compel them to like pull up their saris and do that, wash their feet in the wash basin? And so I called, what do you think was the reason? Very good. It never occurred to me, head of HR, okay, to think of the religious proclivities and religious requirements of my very varied workforce. They need to wash their feet before prayer time. And who explained this to me? My HR director in India. Because I said, what the hell? That's wash basin for your hand. Why do you use it for your feet? Well, HAIDEE, because we don't provide it to them. So, when we built a new facility, we built a place where they can comfortably wash their feet, and not only that, we built a prayer room for them. So, remember that this AEC will also provide you access to labor of different culture, of different religion. Are you ready? Is your organization ready? Next, in what way have you leveraged technology and new media, okay, the internet, in your service delivery model? If your operations right now is heavily reliant on brick and mortar service model, where recruiting, if you want to apply to a job, you need to go to our recruiting center, then rethink that process. Because people from Myanmar will not go to your brick and mortar site to be interviewed by you. How will you accommodate a borderless economy within your, how will you be able to accommodate that within your current process? Next, what channels are you using to communicate not just with your employees, but your prospective employees? I stand here proud that I am now in Facebook. That's a very recent happening only. Only a month and a half ago that I got into Facebook. Previously, I thought, "Ugh, I'm a very private person. I don't want to deal with Facebook. I don't want to make my personal life public to everyone." But then we had our high school reunion, and every time I'd ask for a copy of the photo, they tell me, "It's on Facebook. Just go there." So I became a Facebook, not addict, but a Facebook user. And it was only then that it dawned on me how powerful a medium it is. First and foremost, I can spy on who amongst my employees are checking their their Facebook accounts during work hours. But a powerful medium, really seriously, to get to know the things that are important to the different demographics that comprise our employee base. Okay? So my pamangkins, my nieces and nephews are the ones teaching me how to set those privacy settings. And my great moment of glory happened the other day when I got home and they had CNN on. So I had also influenced them into watching CNN finally, as they have influenced me to be part of the Facebook community. Next, how competitive is your compensation package? And not just domestically. I know I was one of those HR practitioners who would only look at Towers Watson data for the Philippines, but no more. You're competing, we are competing against a global market. How are you preparing your employees today for the skills that your organization will need tomorrow? Or better yet, do you even know what skills will be needed by your organization tomorrow? And if you do not know what the strategic direction of your organization is, if you're not being a true business partner, then you have a long way to go. And the next, have you developed specific strategies to partner with sectoral associations? Gone are the days when we can survive all by our lonesome self within the four corners of our room. We need to reach out. We need to reach out to organizations like PMAP and ECOP or ECOP. Need to reach out to your academic institution to understand what is it that you're doing in your curriculum and what can I do as an institution to help you give better graduates to my industry. And then, last but not the least, and I'm sure there's many more that you can add to this one, how attractive is your brand? Does your brand cater to only local employees or local prospective employees? So you need to rethink that, making it more global. Okay? Now, going back to us, HR practitioners, are you ready? Are we ready? So, what are some of the things that I believe we should be asking ourselves? And I have been asking myself this since the time that I learned about the AEC. And it's quite recent, first quarter of this year, when I was invited to a PMAP event. That's only when I got to know about this. So, questions that I believe we should be asking ourselves. How have we remained relevant to the changing times? Are we even minutely aware of the socio-economic and geopolitical events and forces that are shaping economies around us? And how it will impact our business? Because for sure, regardless of whether we acknowledge it or not, it will impact us. Okay? How have we remained relevant? The next one, are we continuing to learn new skills? And if yes, what new skills have we learned? And are we sure that these skills are aligned to a recognized competency framework? And you're like, say what? A globally recognized competency framework. Do we even know that PMAP has a competency model for HR practitioners? Why is it important that we need to align ourselves with that? Because believe you me, what we think are important might not exactly what the industries and the profession think as important. One of the things that really surprised me the most this year, my 10 big aha moments of 2014, one of those is that HR is not even a profession. Did you know that? HR is not a profession. PMAP and ECOP, they're both working towards getting HR recognized as a profession, and that's a long-winded process. It requires a law, there has to be codified body of knowledge, etc. There has to be approved curriculum, etc., etc. At this point in time, excuse my language, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can call themselves an HR professional. As a matter of fact, go to a meeting room, everyone thinks they know HR, right? They have opinions about how to do HR. So that's why I believe it is important for us to be aligned, because sooner or later, I am of the belief that PMAP will be successful in its quest to getting HR recognized as a profession. And with that comes, hopefully will come, a recognition also of the profession within the regional space. Okay? So at least, if you're aligning the skills that you're developing within you to the standards that you know are going to be globally recognized and to which your competencies are going to be measured against, you're ahead of the pack already. Okay? So, the next one. Do you serve as a good role model for developing a culture of lifelong learning? Or are you one of those who keeps on saying, or who loves to say, napagdaanan ko na yan, so hindi ko na kailangang balikan ulit? Okay? A culture of lifelong learning. Because there are so many things on a day-to-day basis that we can learn, not just from each other, but also from Facebook. Correct. Next. Again, I put the onus here on the HR practitioners to be the conduit, okay? If not the one leading the pack when it comes to forging better, stronger relationship with different sectors. Because if we don't do that, who will? And at the end of the day, it is us who's going to benefit. Because hopefully, if we do the right things, we'll have better pipeline for the talents that we need in the organization. Right? So our lives as HR practitioners will be hopefully a lot simpler. Now, there are clearly many obstacles to increased integration, as you have probably realized. Yet there are also many opportunities. As aptly stated in the ILO study, the AEC will be a driver of growth across the region, enabling the private sector to access bigger markets and strengthen its market presence. But, as ILO itself underpins, it is a process that needs to be managed. In the end, my view is that how you or us as HR practitioners and our respective organizations will fare in the IEC or AEC will largely depend on the level of preparation that preceded the integration. So, how many of you here now say that you're ready to run with the Tigers? Raise your hand. Hans is still very much convinced that he's ready to run with the Tigers. It seems, Hans, that you're the only one who's gonna run with the Tigers. I hope you don't become the meal, given that you're the only one. So, friends, fellow HR practitioners, if you've come to the conclusion then that you're not yet ready to run with the Tigers, then my advice to you, start getting up as soon as you get back to your respective offices. Start wearing your stripes. There's still 6 months to go. There might, and I emphasize might, still be time for you to catch up. Thank you very much.